Hello, I'm Maciej Mikos and you're watching World Talks. Europe is ready to send its troops to Ukraine as part of security guarantees, EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen announced. But as Europe debates the post-war architecture, Russia does its best to prolong the war with the help of its Asian allies. And to talk about it all, we're joined by Wierenga, lecturer in international relations at the Baltic Defence College. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Pleasure to be with you.
Likewise, the EU Foreign and Defence Ministers Summit in Copenhagen came to an end. What are the main takeaways in your opinion?
I think that the main takeaway is that there is a vast understanding that the options to swiftly and decisively act on foreign security policy need to change. And around a dozen countries are looking into now unexplored legal possibilities to look at a qualified majority to make decisions as opposed to a unanimous decision-making procedure. And this is a step in the right direction. And if this is the way that it actually proceeds, all indicators will lead to U.S. support of a Europe that faces the security environment in a manner that takes up more of the burden, let's say. That's not going to be an easy task because there are legal procedures and there are certainly political procedures, but the fact that the discussion is going in this direction is a real indicator of the seriousness of, as you said in the intro to the show, the post-war security environment, which is something that there are more questions and question marks than there are answers right now, but it's a process where people are hitting the ground running and trying to make decisions. But the big key takeaway is that things are going to need to be decided differently in order to secure the continent from Russian aggression, which is almost inevitably going to continue in both certainly in nonlinear forms, and who knows what else, depending on how Russia's war of aggression in Ukraine ends, if it ends, and when it ends.
Let me now quote Ursula von der Leyen. President Trump reassured us that there will be an American presence as part of the backstop. She's talking, of course, about security guarantees for Ukraine. Now, what sort of American presence are we talking about here? Because we've already heard this idea of some sort of an aerial surveillance over Ukraine provided by the US, and now we also are reporting on the idea of private military contractors to be sent to Ukraine. So what was Ursula von der Leyen referring to?
Well, I think that there's a lot of clout around that because German Defense Minister Boris Pistorius came out and he has been critical of Commissioner von der Leyen's comments on this. And he basically said that, publicly discussing this is not the right direction to go in, and he highlighted the fact that the EU has no jurisdiction to act this way, which is why I mentioned that the thinking is changing, and to get the dial moving in that direction, those discussions are being had. But the German defense minister also did talk about what might be possible and what might not be possible, and the conditions around that. And I think that is what we have to look for, because I said there are legal but also political ramifications here. Now, when it comes to the U.S. supporting this, I think looking at the Trump administration, I think what they would like to see is the Europeans doing the heavy lifting with additional U.S. security guarantees as the famous words, the backstop. Right now, the EU is purchasing raw military power from the U.S., and that's been unchanged in light of the U.S.-EU trade agreements. And the EU right now needs U.S. support to destroy high-value military targets. And I think that is what the Trump administration understands. And I don't think that they really want to drive a wedge between American and EU allies. I really do not think that is what has been their objective. I think that their objective was to get key European leaders thinking about how to better adjust their strategic thinking in light of the security environment, and that's what's happening. So I think that the Trump administration is pleased to see that and would work with them as long as the heavy lifting is being done on the ground. Now, you mentioned PMCs, private military companies. Well, there's really no national flag attached to those companies as such. Of course, they're housed in the US or the UK or whatever country they originate from a business perspective. But from the perspective of a soldier, they don't have the national flag tied to them in that same sense. So, of course, that would be an area where PMC companies could do rather well. And I would expect that we would see more PMCs active in Ukraine. But it is very much a political discussion on an ongoing basis, because if you look at what Mr. Putin is doing in Ukraine, he's continuing, to egregiously assault the country. From an air perspective, he's bombing civilian infrastructure, killing women and children, and then he's trying to bide time with these so-called negotiations. And I think if there is a positive semblance out of this, it's that President Trump met with Mr. Putin in Alaska first, and then he met President Zelensky and European leaders afterwards. And I think that that was a very productive discussion that they had, and they were able to really put together something, because after that meeting in Washington, you had the Copenhagen meeting, and this is where what would have been unthinkable over a decade ago in terms of discussions on moving to qualified majority instead of a unanimous decision-making process. We still have a lot to go. It's being talked about. It's not being enacted. But the fact that that's being even discussed openly is a step in the right direction for European security.
Mm-hmm. Right. Now, we're used to Hungary blocking European peace efforts. But it seems that many other, there's a division within the EU about the Russian frozen assets, right? Whether to use them or not. Why can't Europe still use this money against Russia's war machine?
Well, I think that every economic instrument of power should be used. And I think that some may look at the situation and say that things are changing slowly in light of a war on European soil that's been lasting for several years, and the just egregiousness of the aggression that Russia has shown against Ukraine. But you could also look at it from the other angle and say something that has been put together by the European community when it was founded is really coming to light with a major war on its soil in its neighborhood once again, and that it's actually moving slightly quicker than some of the doubters might actually say. And there's always room for weighing options, but of course this is a really politically hot topic, because in years past, if you look at how European leaders have dealt with Mr. Putin, there's more of a realization about who he is and just how ruthless he is, and nobody can deny that anymore. And I think that we are, inching along towards, it used to be the name of the game was don't escalate with Russia. Well, they're escalating with us. So now more and more people are understanding that that's something that's going to happen regardless of what the West does collectively, and that it's really time to stand up and start, using concrete action to stop this. So I would really hope that these economic instruments of power would be utilized as one more tool in the toolbox to try and rein in the Kremlin from pursuing aggressive action against Ukraine, but also against Europe, because we all know, or I hope that people know, there are probably some people that doubt this, that what Putin wants to do is reorchestrate European security architecture, and that's clear to enough people that they're having these types of discussions now.
You named the main inhabitant of the Kremlin, you're a ruthless person, but do you think he's ruthless enough to down an EU plane with the European Commission President on board?
Oh, well, that's a tough question because, of course, that would be um, one of the worst things that could possibly happen. If you look at
Because just to remind our viewers that that's what's nearly happened today, right? The GPS systems of Ursula von der Leyen planes has been jammed by Russians, apparently. A very, very dangerous situation. Therefore, my question to you.
Well, if there's smoke, there's fire, right? And there are a lot of things that are happening or have happened that you would be laughed out of a room several years ago if you would have said. So if somebody would have said, in I don't know, 2014 or 15, let's say, that North Korean troops would be on the ground fighting on behalf of the Russians in Ukraine, a lot of people would not take a prediction like that very seriously. But here we are. I would not put something like that past them. I think that right now, in the days and weeks to come, they're trying to hold some semblance of good faith with the Trump administration. Well, it's always in quotations when it's with the Kremlin, but trying to not do something that is too awful outside of Ukraine. Of course, they're very willing to do that inside of Ukraine. Killing children and all of that, but they're holding back, I think, with Western countries. But if you look at the hybrid attacks that have been going on, mostly in NATO's northeastern flank, they have become more severe and more frequent since the start of the second phase of Russia's war of aggression against Ukraine. So we can't really count something like that out. And I think that they do a lot of things to try and send a message. For example, the recent strikes against Kyiv, where they striked an EU facility and a British facility, I think that they're trying to warn countries that are trying to talk about and are talking about providing peacekeeping forces, that's not something that they're going to be willing to settle for, which is why I think it's so serious to make a decisive decision that this is the actor that we're facing. It's not somebody who's going to back off or back down. So you've got to go in there knowing who they are and what they're willing to do, which is ominous, but it is the reality. And the reality is not always something that you want to be reality, but that doesn't change the fact that it is. Russia is not going to stop becoming a security threat for Europe in the near future.
Truth will set you free. Wierenga, lecturer in international relations at the Baltic Defence College, was our guest this afternoon. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure.
Thank you. And thank you for watching and stay with us for much more here on TVP World.